Hey guys, welcome back to Spector Creative. If you're a longtime watcher, fan, subscriber of this channel, most of the videos that I do here are just kind of me talking with some images and explanation. I do a lot of videos about the toy industry from my many decades of working in the toy industry and also being an adult collector. Gives me an interesting perspective. Well, this video is a little different. This is, I guess, more a bit of a podcast. I recently had the chance to sit down with my friend and colleague David Silva, who you may know as the former designer at NECA and current creator of Beasts of the Mesozoic. He has a new Kickstarter for his new robotic techno dinosaur awesome versions. Dinosaur awesome versions of dinosaurs. That just didn't sound right. You know what I'm trying to say. He does awesome dinosaur toys. The point is, we sat down and uh, there was, well, let's just say there was a little bit of a mix up about how we were going to record this, who was going to be posting it. So I wound up just recording it using Google, not using StreamYard, which means I only had one file of two talking heads. So hence this is a bit more of a podcast. You may want to sit back and just listen, but I do pick up a few toys and point them towards the camera to use as some examples throughout. So there, it is worth watching, but I just wanted to give this little explanation since this is a little bit of a different video. And since it's basically just kind of two heads talking back and forth, also I should note that the third box, which is labeled as Mark, that's just a colleague of ours who was helping to organize this. So, but he had to step out. He was just think of his logistics. Don't worry about it. All right. With this introduction out of the way, let's jump into an awesome toy talk with myself and David Silva, creator of Beasts of the Mesozoic and the upcoming Beasts of the Cyberzoic. Things work. Hi, everybody. Welcome to a very special guest episode, live-ish show. We never do this kind of thing on Spector Creative, but I'm delighted because one of my colleagues and friends in the industry, David Silva from Beasts of the Mesozoic and all sorts of spin-offs and amazing toys is here. I'm not a strict interviewer. This is more going to be just him and I hanging out and talking toys. David, how are you?
Doing good, Scott. Doing good. Thanks.
I know we've to kind of catch people up, maybe who have no idea why you and I would be connecting. Dave and I have both worked professionally in the toy industry for years, and we very much overlapped. He was working at NECA while I was at Mattel working on He-Man. We were kind of buying each other's toys. And now years later, we find ourselves also still in the toy industry. I'm on the consulting side, and David has formed his own toy company. Why don't we maybe just start with that? What got you? How in the world do you go from working at NECA to running a toy company?
When I started working at NECA, I had just started making my own line of dinosaur resin model kits, and I was doing those for quite a while, and then around 2015, I started working on an idea for articulated dinosaurs, and that kind of stemmed from the model kit stuff. So, you know, I knew some other people in the industry who were, having successful Kickstarters like the Four Horsemen and Boss Fight Studio. And I thought, well, let's see if there's any interest in having, detailed articulated dinosaurs that are based on science. And the first Beast of Mesozoic Kickstarter in 2016 did well, and that was just for the Raptors. And I just kept going after that. So I did the ceratopsians a few years after that, and then again with the tyrannosaurs a few years after that. And I was at NECA for the first two, and they were very supportive. I was able to ask questions, and there was a lot of interacting about what I was doing, and everyone was really cool about it. But eventually, it became too much for me to do both the my own dinosaur stuff plus the NECA work. And in 2021, I left NECA to do this full time. So so here we are, and now I'm in the middle of the Kickstarter for Cyberzoic, which is my fourth Kickstarter, and it incorporates the dinosaur toys, but also adds the extra sci-fi element with the human characters plus the armors for the dinosaurs. So, so yeah, that's kind of been the big thing that I've been working towards for a long time. It's kind of been a dream of mine to attempt my own IP. Uh, a lot of these story elements go way back as far as college and even high school in some cases. So it's kind of a culmination of pretty much my whole experience as a creative person. So, so yeah, that's where we're at today. Yeah.
Hey, you know, one, I mean, there's nothing like working on toys that you have been a dream project. And I mean, two, I mean, we've had many conversations. I'm a huge dinosaur toy fan.
Mhm.
Um, and yeah, when I saw what you were doing, uh, well, let's take a step back because I'm going to assume, some people watching this may not be familiar with your toy line, or I definitely want to get into the Cyberzoic line because again, we're taking like two amazing things, sci-fi and dinosaurs, and it's like Reese's peanut butter cups all over again.
Yeah.
So, all right, let's take a look here. So this is what we're talking about here. So this is the Beasts of the Mesozoic line, which I saved this one to open. We're gonna do a live opening. Uh,
Oh, that's cool. Yeah.
let's just kind of start though before we get to your product,
Sure, sure.
because a lot of I think when people come on my channel, it's a lot about how to get started in the toy industry, how to start your own kind of company, and you've successfully done that. So looking at what was at market already, I just kind of want to look at some of these things. And so here we have, this is a Schleich non-articulated figure. This is one I've had for years. This is more of a current Schleich figure, noting the they've really improved on deco, et cetera, et cetera. And David, feel free to comment on any of this stuff too. I'm sure you have opinions.
Uh, I mean, it's not really what I collect. You know, I'm very much into action figures myself. So, no, I like articulation design and things like that. So, so
Well, so
this,
here then that's perfect because here's Mattel's action figure,
yeah, yeah,
if you will. This is their Hammond series or Amber, whatever their Marvel Legends name is currently. They've changed
yeah,
it a few times. Um, I will say, for what I was expecting to be kind of a Marvel Legends quality, I mean, the jaw doesn't even open. Very, the deco is okay on the horns. It's kind of nice.
mhm, yeah.
Um, and then one other one before we get to your beautiful product. This is one of my favorite dinosaur toys of the last few years. This came out with the last, well, actually the middle Jurassic Park movie with
Mm,
Mattel. Articulated bones. I just always thought this was like wow, you can it's like black. This is actually like Black Series type articulation.
yeah, yeah, yeah.
Um, but they sold these as science kits. I bought them as action figures.
Yeah,
So
yeah. I see those every once in a while. Yeah, it's a cool idea, and that's actually something that I kind of wanted to get to at some point. Do like a highly detailed, articulated skeleton line, which I think there's a lot of potential there.
what I think is interesting about that is everything in life as a skeleton tends to have a very death mortality type feeling to it, symbolism. But a dinosaur skeleton is different. It because since we've never seen them alive, this tends to be like it's the most alive skeleton. Does that kind of make sense?
Yeah, that's the closest we'll ever get to seeing one right
Yeah,
there.
like I don't see this as a symbol for death the
Right.
way I would see a human skull as a symbol for death.
Mhm. Yeah.
Like, which is why I think there's more of a fascination with their scale. All right, so let's see. So already we've got let's talk about this, a very beautiful package. I don't know how often you sit in on unboxing. Um, I had some of your amazing product, but it was forsconded by my nephew, but it went to a good. Anytime dinosaur toys can get to a, you know, dinosaur playing, I couldn't say no. So that's why they all disappeared. All right, so we got a nice full color hit with multiple uh, uh, foil stamps there. Beautiful art. And unlike, all of Hasbro's product where they're hiding things so you can't see what you're getting, you definitely show off your product. All right, nice diorama there. And if you haven't looked at the back, beautiful cross-sell of art. I'm a huge fan of cross-sells, another thing that's going away. All right, so as I unclick the little duets is what they're actually called. Talk to us a little bit about this guy.
So this is a fan's choice variant of the Medusa Ceratops that was originally funded in the second Kickstarter for the Ceratopsians. Um, what I do sometimes with the fan's choice, I will basically bring it to the fans and say, let's see suggestions for what should be repainted, and let's have suggestions for what those repaints should be based on. And this was one of the ones that got voted, and this is based on the white-lipped python, which has a very iridescent look to it in real life. So I was trying to, I don't know if you're gonna be able to get that on without a hair dryer, but hopefully. But yeah, so I was trying to mimic the oh, good, nice. I was trying to mimic the iridescent look of the python without, because we don't really have paint that can do that perfectly. So this was it was an interesting color scheme to come up with. There's a lot of colors in there, a lot of metallics, but it's actually gone over pretty well. I think the fans were really happy with it, and I'm really happy with it. I think it's one of our best products. So yeah, and this is basically something that I came up with the fans. So
And then kind of looking side by side, you're getting about the same size, but obviously paint wise and articulation, it doesn't even come close. I think a lot of fans don't realize how expensive paint is.
oh yeah, definitely.
Yeah,
Yeah.
you want to maybe just talk about that for a little bit. I mean, this is, even, oh, just grab like whoops, ignore that Marvel Legends figure here. I mean, he's got a good amount of paint, what he needs. But I mean, that's like,
Yeah.
this is a lot. I mean, this is even more, than like a Motu Classics figure has a lot of paint, but not even close. I mean, what you're doing is beyond premium. So please, yeah, how were you able to do that and how'd that come about?
Well, I started designing the color schemes coming from a model kit type background. That's how I started painting figures, was with the model kits, and I really get into the color schemes and finding inspiration for the colors. So to me, the paint work was just as important as the sculpting, and I think that's kind of become something that separates the Beast of Mesozoic from the other dinosaur toys, is that we put so much effort into the color schemes and the paint work, and we're basically making mass-produced art at this point. And that's what we're kind of going for. And I feel like the more effort we put into the color schemes and the paint, the more realistic it feels and looks on your shelf. So
And I mean, obviously, any toy sold online and the adult collector type, you're paying a premium for part of that is based on the low production run.
right.
But obviously you have put a lot of in the deco. What would you say, percentage wise? I mean, of the total, is 10%, 20%, well, I'm giving comparison numbers for people who really wouldn't. Let's just put it this way. Usually deco is not much of the overall cost. Would you say it's compared to other product you've worked on? that this is significantly more?
That's the weird thing. This is all I've done, so I don't really have a good way to compare it to something else. Like when I was working at NECA or Hasbro, like I didn't see what things cost, so I didn't really have a good idea about that sort of thing. But I'm I'm sure I could do easy, some more simple deco and have it come in at a lower price. But this is basically if I can't put it out the way that I want to put it out, then it's not worth doing at all. So that's just kind of where I'm at with it. And I have the prices to cover the expense and then have some profit to move forward. But yeah, at the end of the day, if it doesn't look a certain way, then it's not really worth making. So
A huge benefit of owning your own toy company and being
yeah,
privately owned. I
exactly.
think
Yeah, yeah,
fans can also look at things like what McFarlane Toys does compared to Mattel and Hasbro, and it's the same way. With Hasbro, yes, or Mattel, you're going to get cost reduced, deco reduced product because it has to hit certain margins that
right.
stockholders require.
Yeah. And that's a big advantage I have being a very small company is not having a huge amount of overhead. That I don't have to concern myself with having a large profit margin on each figure. I basically am doing this because I love the industry. I love toys, and I feel like I have something to contribute to it. And I know that there's a business aspect to that, but at the same time, because I'm so small, I have a lot of flexibility as far as like trying new things and putting stuff out there like that is different than what is normally done. So sometimes it works, sometimes it doesn't. But even in the cases when it doesn't work, I still have enough flexibility to just move on. It's fine. You just learn from it and you move on. Um, so yeah, I mean, it's just a completely different business model when you have such a tiny company compared to like a Hasbro or Mattel, who are like huge and they have all kinds of different structures.
I know. I think that's one of the biggest misconceptions. I think a lot of action figure collectors, uh, you know, don't realize, when they think that these companies are just rolling in profits, but you've got to pay for healthcare
Oh
and you
yeah,
know,
yeah,
like how many, just as comparison, and I promise we're going to get to pimping the new line ASAP.
yeah, whatever. Yeah.
How many total employees would you say you have?
I have one employee.
Well, there you go, folks. So you can see when you have one employee and a loyal fan base, you can make product that looks like that.
Yeah.
So before we get to the new stuff, the last question about you getting started, of going from working as a designer at NECA to running a toy company, you're very infamously, this was up as a Kickstarter, and one of the reasons you can successfully do that is because dinosaurs are just animals. You were not talking about infamously, I got it right here, the good old cube, the fidget cube that was on uh was up for funding, and before it even hit its goal, overseas companies knocked it off.
Oh wow.
Well, a dinosaur is a dinosaur, so you can't really knock that off. You just have to support your artistic vision for that. And now you're moving beyond dinosaurs to meshing, again, two of my favorite things, dinosaurs and robots. So
Right.
okay, you know, dino writers aside, let's get into this. What's the new line about, and where can people get it?
Well, I'll just start off by saying that you can check out the whole Kickstarter. Just go to cyberzoic.toys. And that link will take you directly to the Kickstarter.
And
And
we'll have that in the
okay,
description, guys.
and so basically, it's as far as timeline goes, it's actually a sequel to Beast of the Mesozoic because it's on our own timeline and it takes place in the distant future. So by having it on our own timeline, it's backward compatible with the Beast of Mesozoic figures. So some of the armors will fit the toys that are out now, and then we're also bringing a bunch of new stuff in as well as far as new species. And like the whole idea was to build upon this universe. So the Beast of Mesozoic is the past, and Cyberzoic is the future. And eventually, we do want to fill in the middle with modern day animals, but I think we're a few years away from that.
So all of the Cyberzoic dinosaurs will, size wise as well, be completely compatible. It's kind of like one dinosaur universe.
Yeah, so there will be a main scale, which is 1/18 scale, 3 3 3/4 inch humans, and that'll be the main scale. Now we might deviate here and there, like Beast of the Mesozoic deviates from that scale sometimes with 1/6 scale or 1/35 scale. So you could see something like that in Cyberzoic at some point. There was even at PowerCon recently, I showed off 1/12 scale versions of the two main characters, and people had really positive response to that. So that's something we might do, like like Marvel Legends style, 6 inch characters from the story. But before I got to that, I wanted to kind of establish the brand, establish the world, before I tried to push the actual characters. Um, but yeah, for all intents and purposes, it's a 1/18 scale toy line. So everything kind of, you know, can be in scale with each other. Sort of like how you have like the original Star Wars toys could have the vehicles and all that stuff. So this has basically vehicles, but in the form of the dinosaurs and things like that. So
Yeah, no, I mean that honestly, the perfect point that I happen to have picked up this R2 because yes, I mean these were originally the Star Wars line was a vehicle line. These were the accessories. It
yeah,
just turned out that we liked these more. I mean, not that the X-wings didn't sell, but when we think of Star Wars toys, we tend to think of the figures. But yes, I mean that's that's kind of why a 3 3/4 line exists, is to accommodate that
right.
type of play pattern. Going back to I think Fisher Price Adventure People, but that's a YouTube video for another time. All right, so the content then. So I mean, yeah, you've developed what's unique is actual characters and human characters. When will we see this launch, and in what form?
Well, the characters are already available on the Kickstarter right now. So the way it's set up on the Kickstarter, you can buy the dinosaurs separately, the armor can be separate, and the humans can be separate, or you can buy a bundle and get a discount and buy everything together as a set. So we have several sets available right now on the Kickstarter, um, and that that kind of caters to both the natural history audience and the sci-fi audience. So like if you're just in a natural history, you just want the animals, then you can just buy the animals. But if you want, the whole story and the whole character thing with the armor, then you can get a good deal, you know, getting the whole thing. So I wanted to present those options, to kind of bring in as many people who would have any interest as possible. I don't want to exclude anybody because they're not into sci-fi or they're not into, you know, straight up animal stuff. So yeah, that's the idea. And then in addition to that, there's also a dragon as well because we have dragons in this story as well.
Ah, yes, that's right. And in yours, dragons and dinosaurs are different animals.
Yeah, they're from different planets. So we bring the dinosaurs, but these dragons are the native species of this planet that they're on. So the planet is similar to Earth, and they had a similar evolutionary track for their animal species and the wildlife, and they have these very large reptilian creatures that we basically named dragons because they look like the dragons that we know, and that becomes a big part of the storyline because they don't want us there, and there's this whole conflict that happens. So.
And so beyond the toys, the actual the content, the storyline, will that be available like I guess in comics, in YouTube, like how will we digest that content?
So we're working on a comic book right now, and we're basically finalizing the first issue as far as the script goes. And we started doing some thumbnails for the visuals, and hopefully we can show something before the Kickstarter is over. Uh, but the idea is to have the comic ready when the first set of figures hit next fall. And if the costs permit, I'd like to include mini comics with the figures, just like we had when we did the old He-Man figures like that. So um, that's something I would really be interested in doing. And if uh, if I can do that, that's great. But at the very least, we'll have an online comic, and we're going to try to get like a regularly published comic at some point as well. So basically, going to push this in whatever direction we can, because we have tons of story, we have tons of character development, and just a lot of potential to move forward with a lot of different storylines. So
That's, I mean, like I said, you had me at dinosaurs and robots, well, or sci-fi. It's like it's such a natural, there's there's natural categories for the action figure world, kind of barbarian, space, military, which I
yeah,
never understand why DC can't get that world that time forgot movie going. But I,
I don't know. They probably have their hands full right now with just the usual DC stuff, I think.
that's true. But it's GI Joe versus Jurassic Park. It sells itself. All right, Hollywood, call me. All right. Um, so the kind of the last thing before we go back to finishing up with Cyberzoic, when you got started and made that transition from NECA, were you able to completely fund using Kickstarter? One of the obstacles a lot of people have is getting capital, having either investors or that initial amount of money to either build prototypes or even go into production. A lot of people don't realize how expensive it is.
Oh yeah.
The upfront amount, if you want to produce 10,000, 5,000, even 1,000 units of this, you have to pay the vendor, the factory, before you they turn the machines on. So how are you able to tackle that?
Well, the Kickstarter obviously gets everything started. But another thing that's been a huge benefit has been after the Kickstarter campaign's over, the pre-orders switch over to another platform called BackerKit, and everything that was funded on the Kickstarter remains available on the BackerKit at a slightly higher price, and that will stay up until the figures actually ship. So between the Kickstarter and the BackerKit, I've always had enough money to get everything done. So it's worked out pretty well so far.
That honestly, absolutely, and not everyone not only has that success, but I think that formula, as I was discussing earlier, things like an invention like this, putting it up on Kickstarter can get knocked off, and
Yeah, yeah,
not everything works, but um, that is the biggest obstacle, with inventors or new toy companies, that is that upfront capital. And if you can get that completely from Kickstarter, and obviously that entailed reaching out to the fan base. What
yeah.
what what was that like? When you kind of first needed to go to the fans.
Well, like I said before, I was already doing the dinosaur model kits, so I had been doing that since I think it started in 2009 with the model kits. And so between 2009 and then the Kickstarter in 2016, I had a reasonable size fan base for my work at that point. So it was enough of a platform to get started. So when I did post the Kickstarter, I had enough eyes on it, and I had enough people talking about it that it got more and more people involved. Uh, I wasn't sure how many of those people would translate into action figure fans because a lot of the model kit community is very much into like non-articulated figures, while the action figure people are very much into action figures. So luckily enough of them came along, and plus we brought in a bunch of new people, so it worked out. But if I didn't have that established fan base already for the model kits, I think I would have had a much harder time attracting people to the Kickstarter. Because if you're just going in without an audience, it's extremely difficult to get seen.
No, you hit a really good point. And again, this is great advice for people looking to do, something likewise, starting up their own toy company or just bringing any product to market is, you also had the advantage of your pre-career, your career at NECA. And, likewise, my time at Mattel helped me build my YouTube channel. I would never have, the people that watch this if I hadn't worked professionally. And, I think that becomes advice. I'm curious if you'd agree that it's in a lot of ways go out there and let's, make a name for yourself first before you try to jump in and sell the new mousetrap. Would you say that?
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, because there's so much to compete with as far as not just this market, but just in general on the internet. I mean, you have to really have a reason to get people's attention. And if you're coming to say, Kickstarter and you have 20 or 30 followers, you're probably not going to do very well. And it's not because you don't have a good idea, it's just because nobody's seeing it. So a lot of effort has to be put in beforehand to build that audience, to get more and more people aware of it before you actually launch something. And luckily I was in a pretty good position to do that originally because of the model kit stuff. It was never a long-term plan. It was just like I just wanted to put my work out there somehow. And I knew I liked doing dinosaur stuff. So that's that's what got me started. And then eventually that turned into a situation where that lined up with my interest in action figures. So yeah, it's just one way of many that you can do it. But at the very core, I think anybody who wants to bring something to Kickstarter should develop some sort of fan base beforehand.
That no, again, and for all the new entrepreneurs out there, that's great advice. I echo that completely because there's a lot of voices out there, and if you want to stand out,
But yeah, absolutely.
uh, I know you mentioned you were just at PowerCon before the Kickstarter ends. Where else do you have any other, I guess, live events or places that people can see you or during the Kickstarter and beyond coming up?
Not during the Kickstarter, but right after we have Legions Con coming up here in New Jersey, and that's a toy convention that's put on by the Four Horsemen. And I'll be there with two of my guys, Ross and Chris, and we're gonna have Cyberzoic prototypes on hand to look at in person. And then we'll also have a bunch of Beast of Mesozoic stock to sell. So that's the only other show that I have planned. I don't do a lot of shows, so that one is it's basically local. It's like half an hour away from me, so I can't turn that down. Uh, but yeah, so that happens on November 10th and 11th, I believe. So uh, so yeah, that one would be a good place to see what I'm doing.
All right, guys, if you're in the Garden State, you know where you'll be on the first weekend of November. That's
Yeah.
awesome. So, all right, so looking ahead, obviously you've got a couple waves in mind. Where are you going next? Is it you mentioned going back to earth-based animals and I think that was kind of your original inspiration, I think.
Uh, my, my overall inspiration was to have a collection of animal action figures in scale with one another throughout time. So there's a lot of room to go forward and backward right now. Like with with Cyberzoic, we don't have to be limited to just dinosaurs. We also like we're including mammals now, and then we also have designs for like alien creatures that can go with it as well. And then on the other side of that, there is definitely opportunity for doing modern day animals like elephants, wolves, giraffes, or whatever. That would be cool. And then you know we can go even further back in the past and do like the metrodons or sea scorpions or whatever. Like all of it can be part of one whole thing, and that's kind of been my idea from the beginning, is to have this collection that you can kind of stand back and see natural history as a whole instead of just seeing it as here's the dinosaur era, here's the modern era, here's the, the pre-dinosaur era, whatever. Um, so yeah, I mean, there's tons of opportunity to go in a bunch of different directions with the whole natural history angle. But at the same time, I also want to keep the Cyberzoic thing going as well, because we already have three big parts, basically planned out. So this one right now is just the introductory part. So.
Well, like you said at the beginning just now, having these creatures, these animals in scale with the figure lines we all collect, to me, yeah, again, that's the biggest draw. If I want a horse for a Marvel Legends, I might have to steal something from Lord of the Rings, or hope
Yeah.
that there's compatibility. But yeah, I'm definitely on board with you there, because it's all about scale, and getting, when scales work together, you can have a lot of fun.
Oh yeah.
What's what's your dream animal? If regardless of tooling and support from fan base, if you could make one animal, what would it be that would be awesome?
Oh man. I mean, we've done the T-Rex, so I don't think there's much more challenging, you know, animal to do than that. My favorite dinosaur is the Acrocanthosaurus, which is another large carnivore, and that's planned for the second Cyberzoic launch. But I don't know. I mean, it's hard to say. I love to do more dragons. To me, those are animals. They're just not real. But
Oh yeah, I was even including everything,
yeah,
from dragons to
yeah.
humpback whales.
Yeah, I would love to figure out like how to do articulated sea animals. That would be a really big challenge actually. And I'm very much into whales and sharks. So that's something I'd like to tackle at some point. Uh, yeah, there's a lot of challenge there to articulate sea animals, because they don't stand up basically. So and another thing that a lot of people have been requesting are the pterosaurs, like the pteranodon and things like that, the flying reptiles. Um, so that's something I think we'll get to in a few years. But that's going to be another big challenge, like trying to articulate the wings and figuring out if they can fold up or not, things like that. So like trying to translate these animals with all these soft tissues into like a hard plastic form and have them move in a way that looks natural. It's always a big challenge.
No, and I think that's what fans will especially enjoy about your line if they haven't experienced it before. Because as you said, most dinosaur lines are, non-articulated, or, limited articulation.
Yeah,
I picked up two of the same thing. But you were so used to the human form and the articulation that comes with that. I mean, even if, it's on a robot, it's still a human form, more or
yeah,
less.
yeah,
That, yeah, when you're figuring out the gait, and I remember we went through this with things like Battle Cat and Swiftwind when I was working on Motu Classics, because we were really envisioning those as bucks, as reusable parts to make multiple animals. And clearly that strategy pays off on your line as well. Um, yeah, for action figure fans, like if you, when we don't, I can't think of an articulated, porpoise or whale or, I mean, there's definitely, wow. I mean, I'm already thinking like squids and
Yeah, yeah, I was
way,
thinking, yeah, yeah. I guess you'd have to use a lot of like wire tentacles, things like that, you know.
I love that you're going to tackle this because it's like someone's got to do it, and this is
Yeah,
great because like cracking the articulation on animals has not really been explored that much, and that's an exciting frontier.
yeah, yeah, it is, and it's a big motivator for me because I've worked a lot on the human figures, and I collect tons of human figures just like anybody. But I feel like that's covered, you know, like there's other people that are doing a great job with all that, and I I really am more interested in the challenge of like figuring out how to do the animal stuff. Uh, I've been interested in animal anatomy for a long time now, and like how do you break that down? How do you put joints that move realistically and things like that? So that's basically what I want to contribute to the industry. I think that in order to keep the industry moving in a positive direction, we can't just rely so heavily on the same IPs over and over again. I think at some point we need new stuff too. We need to bring something to the industry that is a little bit different that adds to it instead of just kind of stays in the same place more or less. So yeah.
You mean you don't want another Ghostbusters movie and more Indiana Jones? And I no, amen. It's tough. Getting companies to invest in something new, which takes honestly, independent companies because it's a lot of risk.
Oh, it is. Yeah. And that goes back to what we were talking about before, where I'm a small, very small company that don't have all the same overhead and all the obligations that these larger companies have. So I can take risks, and Cyberzoic is one of those risks. I spent a lot of funds from Beast of Mesozoic to develop the Cyberzoic stuff over the past 2.5 years, and you know it might just do okay. I really don't know what's going to happen, but I wanted to at least attempt to put something out there that isn't just the same that we've been getting. And I'm a huge fan of pop culture and the retro stuff and everything, just like anybody. But I also understand like 20 years from now, maybe we don't really want the 20th iteration of Ninja Turtles or the 50th iteration of Transformers. Maybe there's room for something to happen now that will be carried forward. So maybe Cyberzoic isn't it. Maybe it is. I don't know. But I at least want to put it out there and see what happens. So
No, and for that, I applaud you both as a fan and a toy maker because not enough people, put out new IP and take try new things in the toy space, and people need to play and collect, and the happiness that comes from that. Um, all right, so we'll have links to everything in the description, but where do you want people to head next?
right now, Cyberzoic.toys is the main place because that's where the Kickstarter is. Uh, but in general, you can go to creative-beast.com. That's my main website. So everything can be found there.
Well, guys, you would not be disappointed whether you're a, loose collector or you want to keep things in package. I mean, again, there's so few toys that just are the packaging just is as beautiful as the toy these days. Spent 2 years as a packaging copywriter. That comes from experience. Thank you so much for sitting down today, David. It's so great to talk toys with someone who has understands the challenges and can explain this, and I think the viewers really appreciate that. So
Yeah.
thanks for bringing that perspective and helping to shed some light on how to make beautiful looking toys.
Yeah. Well, thanks for having me. I appreciate it.
All right. Well, that wraps up the first ever podcast for Spector Creative. And by the way, if you're asking who Mark is, that third screen, Mark was just a friend of David's that helped coordinate all of this. And unfortunately, he had to jump out of the call, but his box remained. Like I said, hence why this is a podcast, and I'm not editing this as a video. Next time we'll use StreamYard. All right. Thanks again for watching, guys. I hope you enjoyed this video. Share it with others if you think they'll find this content interesting. And I'll see you in the next video.